The morning after the fire burned the names, Serafina woke first. Dmitri was still asleep, one arm over his eyes, the other stretched across the bed like he'd meant to find her there and never let go. His hair was tousled, face more peaceful than she'd ever seen it. She almost didn't move, but the cold pulled her out of the bed, and the ache in her chest wouldn't let her rest. In the kitchen, she made tea, not the way she had on the streets, boiling puddle water over a stolen flame, but carefully, like she was crafting something sacred. When she returned to the bedroom, Dmitri was awake, watching her. "Morning," she said. "You made tea? I thought we'd need strength." He sat up slowly, eyes still fogged from sleep. "Do you think it'll be today? What? When the peace breaks?" She handed him a cup. "Does peace break, or does it just run out?" By noon, they were back at the table with Alexei's map. Only now, the marks were their own. Red pins, green dots, circles and ink. "If we hit the money first," Dmitri said, tapping a spot on the map, "they'll feel it. Hard. What is it?" "A drop house in Lyon. Cash moves through it every week. Dangerous? Only if we fail. Then we won't." He looked at her then. Something passed between them. Not fire, but flint. They spent the afternoon practicing. Serafina learned how to hold a gun, not like a soldier, but like someone who had decided her life was worth protecting. Dmitri taught her how to read a room, spot exits, count footsteps. She picked it up fast. "You've done this before," he said. "I've survived before. This just makes it louder." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Serafina stood outside the cottage, wind tugging at her coat. She wasn't shaking this time. She was ready. Inside, Dmitri packed. He paused once, staring at the photograph in his wallet. A younger version of himself, a man beside him, smiling, dead now. He didn't put it away. He burned it. When Serafina came in, the flames were already dying. She stood beside him, watching the ashes fall like snow. "Memories? Mistakes. You're not the man in that picture anymore." "I know. He wouldn't have fought for someone else." She looked up at him. "But you will?" "I already am." They didn't speak again that night, but in the quiet a plan grew. Not just to run, but to wound the thing chasing them. And maybe, if they were brave enough, to end it. Before dawn, they loaded the car. She carried her notebook. He carried the gun. And in the back seat, wrapped in linen, a simple explosive. Not for vengeance, but for freedom. As the engine started, Serafina whispered something he almost didn't hear. "I don't want to be a rose that only blooms in winter." "Then we'll find you spring," he replied. And with that, they drove into the dark, not to hide, but to strike. Lyon was cold, not in temperature, but in feeling. Stone streets, gray buildings, and narrow alleys that never forgot the past. It was a city that had watched rebellions rise and fall, and it held secrets in every corner. Perfect for ghosts. And for people who wanted to become them. Dmitri and Serafina arrived just after midnight. The drop house sat 3 blocks off a main road, tucked behind a bakery and hidden in plain sight. It looked like a butcher's storage unit, unassuming, a place people passed every day without looking twice, but Dmitri knew. Inside was a vault, not guarded by police or politicians, but by mercenaries. Men who didn't ask names, only prices. "How many?" Serafina asked as they crouched in the alley behind the building. 4 outside, 2 at the door, more inside, maybe 10 total. "And the plan?" He showed her the blueprints again, simple, crude. "We breach the back wall here. Distraction to the east. Get in, trigger the charge, and out through the sewer beneath the far hall." Sounds suicidal. It is. Good. Feels like home. The first move was hers. She walked into the bakery next door, smiling, scarf wrapped tight, carrying a bag with a timer and a smoke canister. 5 minutes later, the fire alarm tripped, and the men outside the drop house turned. While they panicked, Dmitri slipped through the shadows, 2 down, silent. Serafina reappeared behind the delivery crates. Her eyes met his. No fear, only focus. Inside the drop house, they found it exactly as expected. Cold, sterile. Stacks of cash, crates of weapons, and a vault door thick enough to hold back time. "Set it," Dimitri said. She pulled the linen-wrapped charge from her coat. They placed it behind the main support beam, far enough to collapse the structure, not to kill. This wasn't revenge. It was message. 2 minutes, she said. Then came the part they hadn't planned for. A boy, maybe 16, holding a tray of coffee, eyes wide as the world collapsed around him. "No," Serafina whispered. "Not him." Dimitri raised the gun. "Dimitri, don't." He paused. A second, 2, then lowered it. "Get out," he told the boy. "Run." Now. The boy fled. And the timer ticked down. They escaped through the old sewer pipe, ankle-deep in foul water, the smell almost enough to make her gag. But Serafina didn't complain. She just kept moving. One hand in his... Above them, the building erupted, not in fire, but in thunder, a sound that cracked the night wide open. Smoke filled the skyline, and the balance shifted. They drove for hours, south, then east, into the countryside. Dimitri didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, "You stopped me." "Yes, why?" "Because if you'd shot him, you wouldn't have come back from it." "And you care?" She looked at him, tired, filthy, heart still pounding. "Yes," she said, "and so do you." They stopped at a gas station near dawn, bought water, bandages, a pack of strawberry gum. She paid. He stood outside, watching the sun rise over unfamiliar hills. When she came back out, she wrapped her arms around his waist. "We made it," she said into his coat. "This time, then we'll make it again." He held her close, said nothing. But in his chest, beneath the scar and the silence, something bloomed. And far away, in a black tower near Prague, a voice muttered into a phone, "He's alive. And the girl? Still with him. Then bring her back, or bring me her heart." They didn't stop until they reached the southern coast, a small village called Eze, nestled between cliffs and sea, where the roads narrowed into cobblestone and the air smelled like lavender and salt. They rented a room in a quiet inn. The woman who ran it was old and blind in one eye, but she smiled at Serafina like she knew things others didn't. "A girl with a war in her eyes," she whispered, placing the key in her hand, "and a man who carries the ghost of a forest fire." The room was small but warm. Wooden beams, white sheets, a balcony overlooking the ocean, a kettle older than the bed, and a bottle of forgotten wine left behind in a cupboard. It wasn't luxury, but it felt like sanctuary. Dimitri slept for 12 hours, Serafina didn't. She sat on the balcony, knees to her chest, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The sea murmured below, the stars blinked quietly above. She thought about the boy, the one with the coffee tray. His eyes, his fear. "You're not him," she had told Dimitri. But was she lying? Was he still that man? Was she? When Dimitri finally woke, she was still outside. He joined her without speaking, handing her a cup of lukewarm tea. They sat together in the quiet, letting the morning bleed in. "You should have slept more," she said. "You should have woken me." "I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts," she replied. "But I didn't want to disturb yours either." He looked out over the water. What were they saying? "That I'm not brave. You're the bravest person I've ever met." "I'm just tired of surviving," she whispered. "I want to live." They went into town later that afternoon, bought bread from a silent man with burn scars on his hands, cheese from a girl who looked just like Serafina might have, had she never fallen into the streets, a rose from a stall that sold nothing else. He bought it for her without a word. She stared at it for a long time, then placed it in her notebook, pressed between pages like a promise. That evening they cooked together, badly. The rice burned, the cheese melted wrong, the wine was too sweet. They laughed, once, twice, then couldn't stop. For 10 whole minutes the world wasn't chasing them. They were just 2 people in a kitchen, making a mess and trying to breathe. Later they bathed, not together, not yet, but when she stepped from the bathroom in a towel, her skin still damp and her eyes soft with something unspoken, he froze. She moved to the bed, sat beside him. "Do you ever wonder," she said quietly, "if the only reason we care about each other is because no one else did?" "Maybe," he said. "But that doesn't mean it isn't real. It feels real. Then it is. They lay down, facing each other, close, breathing the same air. "If I asked you to run away from all of this, would you?" she asked. He reached out, tucked her hair behind her ear. "Yes," he said. "Even if it meant never going back, never getting revenge, never settling the score? Yes." "Why?" His voice was steady, low. "Because I'm tired too. And you make the tired worth carrying." They didn't kiss that night. But they didn't need to. When she curled into his chest and he wrapped his arm around her, the silence said enough. They weren't perfect, they weren't healed, but they were together. And for now, that was enough. Far away in a cold room beneath flickering lights, a phone rang. A man in a blood-stained coat answered, listened, then smiled. "Let them rest," he said. "They'll come to me eventually. They always do." It started with birds. Dozens of them, fleeing the cliff trees in a sudden shrieking wave, wings like knives against the sky. Serafina noticed first. She was standing on the balcony, brushing her hair, when the silence beneath the birds snapped. Too quiet. Inside, Dmitri froze mid-step, sensing it too. The air, wrong, the light, slanted, like a warning. And then came the sound. Glass, shattering. Upstairs, followed by boots on stairs that weren't theirs. Dmitri moved instantly, pulled Serafina back through the balcony doors, slammed them shut, locked them. "Stay here. Don't move. Don't speak." "Dmitri, I'll come back." She didn't argue, didn't cry. She just watched him go, her fists clenched at her sides. He didn't make it far. 2 men met him in the narrow hall, one with a knife, the other with a silenced gun. Dmitri was faster. He slammed the first into the wall, took the knife to the shoulder, didn't flinch. Twisted, broken arm, shot the other in the thigh. "Who sent you?" he growled. The man bled and smiled. "They're coming for the girl. Not you." Dmitri's fist ended the smile. Serafina didn't stay put. She grabbed the fireplace poker and moved through the adjoining hall quietly, her bare feet making no sound on the cold floor. She heard a voice, not Dmitri's, not a stranger's either. A woman. "Where is she?" The voice purred. "Where's the rose?" Then footsteps, rushing footsteps, and the woman cursed in Russian. Dmitri had led her away. Serafina followed the noise into the back parlor, where a window had been broken, and blood streaked across the rug. She nearly screamed when something grabbed her from behind. But it was Dmitri, bleeding from his arm, his face streaked with sweat and rage. "We have to go. Not without answers. Not now." They made it out the back, into a narrow alley that curved into the village like a secret. Behind them, the inn burned. Someone had thrown fire into the second floor. The old blind innkeeper was dead. Serafina saw her body as they passed, and her scream was silent, locked inside her like a howl never given voice. They reached the car just as more shadows poured into the street. One of them shouted her name, not the girl, her name. "Serafina, we know who you are." She froze. Dmitri slammed the door shut just as bullets hit the windshield. They drove. Faster than the tires could grip the old stones. Faster than reason. 30 minutes outside the village, they stopped at an abandoned service station. Dmitri collapsed behind the car, his arm pouring blood. "You're hit. Knife. Deep. Need to close it. Let me. You don't have to. I want to." She worked fast, cleaning, stitching, crying without making a sound. When she was done, he touched her face. "You saved me. You saved me first." As night fell, they sat inside the broken station, sharing a candy bar in silence. "They knew my name," she whispered. "They're watching more than just me now." "How?" "Someone betrayed us. Alexei? Maybe. What now?" "We go to Prague." "What's in Prague?" He looked at her, eyes like storms lit by fire. "The man who wants your heart in a box." She didn't flinch. "Then let's make sure he never gets it." And from miles away, in a velvet-draped hall, a woman with silver hair and wine-dark lips smiled as she traced Serafina's name on a page. "Soon, little petal," she said. "Soon you'll bloom for me instead." The train to Prague rattled like bones. They sat in the last car, near the window, facing away from the other passengers. Dmitri wore a thick coat to hide the bandage on his arm. Serafina wore silence like armor. She hadn't spoken much since the fire. Not about the innkeeper, not about her name being shouted into the smoke, not about the woman's voice in the hallway. But Dmitri knew she was unraveling quietly and rebuilding just as quietly. He respected her silence, but not her isolation. Halfway through the journey, he reached for her hand. She flinched, then hesitated, then took it. They stayed like that for hours, fingers intertwined beneath the folds of an old coat. The rhythm of the train became a lullaby of unsaid things. They arrived in Prague after midnight. The city was slick with rain, rooftops like crowns under the street lamps. It smelled of wet stone and iron and ghosts that never slept. They moved through it quickly. No taxis, no maps. Dmitri knew where they were going. A door hidden behind a cathedral. A lock that required not a key but a phrase. The dead are never lost, only waiting. The door creaked open. A tall man with a crooked smile and a silver cane stood inside. "I never thought I'd see you crawl back here, Romanov." "Not crawling," Dmitri said. "No, I suppose not." The man's eyes flicked to Serafina. "And who's this flame in the frost?" "She's not yours. Pity, you used to share." His name was Luka Varek, a scholar, a killer. A man who read poetry before executions and brewed poison like wine. He was also Dmitri's old friend, or something like it. They descended into the catacombs beneath Prague, stone tunnels that once held the bones of saints and sinners alike. Now it was home to Luka's information web. Screens, radios, ink maps and thread lines and secrets stacked like relics. "You're being hunted by 3 syndicates," Luka said. 2 out of Moscow, 1 from Brussels. Who's leading the charge? The widow. Serafina's stomach clenched. The woman in the hallway? Her real name is Valeska. She was trained to love pain the way others love music. What does she want from me? Luka looked at her. For a moment his cruel wit vanished. You. Why? Because she collects the beautiful and breaks them, slowly. Serafina turned to Dmitri. Her eyes were dry but full of quiet fire. She won't get the chance. We won't let her, he promised. That night, in a chamber carved from centuries of bone and forgotten dust, Serafina cried for the first time since Lyon. But not from fear. From release. Dmitri held her as the storm left her body, not tightly, not possessively, just there, solid, present. "I'm not a weapon," she whispered. "I'm not a prize. I'm not hers." "No," he said, voice soft. "You're yours, always." The next morning, Luka gave them a list. All the widow's safe houses, her patterns, her weaknesses, few as they are. "And what do you want in return?" Dmitri asked. "A favor. Later." "You don't even know if we'll survive." "Exactly." Luka winked at Serafina. He was always more tolerable when he had something worth bleeding for. They left before noon. But before they climbed out of the catacombs, Luka stopped Serafina. "You'll face her soon. Valeska? She'll come for you personally. She doesn't like loose ends, especially ones with fire in their eyes." "Then I'll burn." "Good. Why are you helping us?" Luka smiled, just a little. "Because I was once someone's rose too, and I let them wilt." They climbed back into the living world, where snow had started to fall, where the sky was silver, and where, just a few blocks away, a widow watched from a spire, licking her lips and whispering to the wind. "Yes, come find me, little fire. Let me see if your thorns are sharp."